Hi, this is Don McAllister, and welcome to another edition of Screencasts Online. Well, another of my favourite apps, and one that we've covered extensively on Screencasts Online, has just moved across to a subscription model, and as such has stirred up a considerable amount of controversy. The app in question is Ulysses. As you might imagine, I've received a fair bit of correspondence surrounding the controversy, so in this episode I'm going to look at the implications for Ulysses, a potentially more cost-effective way to stick with Ulysses if you really want to, as well as some alternative cross-platform writing environments that are not subscription-based. But first, let's take a look at what's happened to Ulysses.